Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour is made in another wild day in the markets, and the markets are down big today. Yesterday, they experienced the kind of sugar high of the president's decision to pause part of his tariff plan, but the early reporting yesterday afternoon claimed that President Trump had reversed himself entirely on tariffs, and that is not at all correct. What the president did was pause the frankly rather bizarre set of tariffs based on the White House's formula of reciprocity. That was the formula that called for us to hammer countries like Madagascar because we like buying their vanilla and they don't buy enough from us. For now, that part of the equation is on hold. That's true. But the White House kept a 10% across-the-board tariff and it increased tariffs on China. CNBC says the tariff on China is now 145%. The markets are reacting to this growing trade war with China. Today, the Budget Lab is out with a new analysis of the tariffs, not last week's tariffs. This analysis was done last night after the partial reversal from the president. The Budget Lab, by the way, is a nonpartisan policy research center that aims to provide in-depth analysis of federal policy proposals for the American economy. What they find is a $4,400 tax hike per American household in the short term from these tariffs, not last week's tariffs, the ones that are still in place. $4,400 per American household. Consumers now face, according to their analysis, an overall average effective tariff rate of 25.3%, the highest since 1909. So how are tariffs affecting small businesses? How could tariffs affect businesses going forward? This hour is going to be a little different. We've invited small business owners from different sectors to join us in short bursts just to kind of give us a snapshot of what they have been experiencing. And listeners, if you're in this category, if you're in small business and you want to weigh in, please do that. You can call the program toll-free, 844-295-TALK, 844-295-8255, 263-WXXI if you're in Rochester, 263-9994. Email the program connections@wxxi.org if you like. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, you can join the chat there, the WXXI News YouTube channel. And by the way, tell us how the tariffs are affecting or could affect you no matter what direction, good, bad, or the other. That's what we want to know. So let's start with this. We've got the CEO of GreenSpark Solar, Kevin Schulte, on the line with us. And Kevin and I have talked about tariffs and these sort of economic turmoil and the possible effect on the solar industry. And so now here we are, and Kevin gets the lead off. So first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm having the time of my life.
I feel like there's some sarcasm there.
It's strong. I'm glad you felt it.
Okay. What has the last week been like since Liberation Day, so-called, in the tariffs? What's it been like for you?
Well, my business partners haven't quite chained me to my desk since Liberation Day, but I think the way we've looked at it is we are struggling to find a path to protect ourselves. At our core, we're a contractor. The product we build is solar. And so our first path was to look at all of our existing contracts and figure out what's left to procure, what might the impacts be from our suppliers, and how do we handle the concept of these tariffs. And so we've done a bunch of that, and that was a really short sprint, right? For our largest portion of our business, it was 23 contracts across 6 customers, each of which valued $5 or more million. So we're trying to figure out how do we procure more effectively within that. And then obviously they went away in part yesterday. Suppliers are telling us, that most of our products will range between a 3 and 8% increase in cost. And that's meaningful and effective. And we hope to have the right, legal language in place to protect ourselves. But I think the bigger challenge that has happened now is just they're creating a freeze in our market for who's going to invest and who's not going to invest in projects, and our projects that are started where costs have to go up going to be abandoned, and all of that sort of stuff that people have become frozen on. And that's where the biggest challenges, I think, come from the turmoil that's created more than the policy or thought process from the White House.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand part of this point here. So is it that you use the word turmoil? Is another word for that uncertainty? In other words, if you don't like the policy, but the policy is consistent, you can plan for it. You know what's going to be there. It will be stable. If you like or don't like the policy, but it changes by the day, it is almost impossible to make long-term or even mid-term plans. Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, businesses are we're led by data-driven people, right? We're trying to make business decisions that are lasting. I don't want to have to do this every day, reevaluate my cost structure every day. And so, yes, the day-to-day whiplash is harder than the policy itself. Remember, right, tariffs in and of themselves are going to cause energy prices to rise. My business is entirely driven by IRR, the payback that the return on investment or payback that a customer gets on investing in a solar farm. And so if energy prices rise, then we can absorb some increase in cost, right? So those things kind of work and make us a little bit resilient to tariffs on some levels. How much do the energy prices rise? How much do the cost? But when it's up and down and on and off, that just creates this freeze that people are like, I don't know what to do next. And I think that, over the last 48 hours has become more of the place our industry is in than the first 5 days since Liberation Day, when we were all just trying to scramble and say, are we protected? How do we procure materials? What is the cost increases going to look like? How much do I have to ask for a customer, and so on and so forth.
So I also want to ask you about the way that that prices and buying, I think those of us who are in the lay public are oversimplifying. And I've learned this lesson in the last week by talking to a couple of people in small business, one in my own family, who do a lot of work domestically. And so I actually thought that there may be some rejoicing in what we were seeing. And it was the opposite. What they told me was that when you have, even if the tariffs were still in place, if you have this tariff on foreign goods, it doesn't just mean, well, now domestic goods are cheaper, because domestic goods will compete and might stay cheaper by a dime or a dollar, but they're going to raise their prices almost in equal measure. And that happened within hours last week, talking to small business owners in manufacturing, in metal fabrication. And so, it's been an economics lesson for me, I will say. For you, that's probably not surprising, Kevin, but generally speaking, what is going to drive your costs the most going forward? Is it stability? Is it where it's coming from? Is it a tariff? What's going to drive costs?
Our costs will primarily be driven by, metals, right? Copper, steel, and aluminum are going to be the primary drivers. And then we have secondary drivers that are things like plastics and resins that often come out of China. Those are things that are going to drive our costs. And then the third thing that's going to drive our costs is unfettered capitalism, is the way I would describe it, right? You've got if a civil contractor, this real time, right? A civil contractor calls me and says, my costs are going up. Well, fuel is actually down at the moment, and aggregate and stone are not being purchased from, out of the country, and arborvitaes so that's just someone saying to us, we are going to take this opportunity to try and make more money. And so those are the things that are happening out in the marketplace. And the last one is the unknown, right? And you saw a lot of that, from 2022 when you had the economic certainty and you sort of coming out of COVID until 2025, where some things, even though the price of steel has dropped over that period of time, the price of solar racking went up. And that's because they figured they could charge more money for this product. And so they did. And so you look at things like that, and that's just, the capitalism piece of the market just sort of kicking in and saying, I will charge whatever I can for my product. And I'm going to use these tariffs and economic uncertainties and things of that nature to drive those price decisions.
All right, a couple other quick things for you, Kevin Schulte, CEO of GreenSpark Solar. Last fall, you took us through kind of different scenarios of possible outcomes with the election and, in your mind, sort of best case, worst case scenarios. Right now, can you briefly describe what a best case, worst case economic scenario is for your business this year, given everything that's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, a good economy makes our business more robust, right? So a growing economy, growing jobs, and keeping costs at a reasonable price is the best outcome for us, right? So this tariff nonsense, the hope is that over the next 90 days that our past trading partners come to the table and negotiate with our White House to figure out what's going to make it so that there is a reasonable set of costs on our business. And we hope it doesn't take too long because, again, I said the turmoil is what causes the most problem for us. So that's the ideal outcome. And then from an overall government perspective, right, the House of Representatives passed the budget this morning. We're worried about that stuff, and that's a whole nother part of the story, and we'll see what happens. Yeah,
we'll talk in the future, I'm sure, about that. Last question for you is on this idea of onshoring. And I take the point that, for example, the United Auto Workers made on this program. When Dan Maloney came on this program and said, hey, we've got plenty of criticisms of Trump, but the UAW is not opposed to tariffs, generally speaking. Now, he said, we don't want indiscriminate trade war with the whole world. We want targeted tariffs that make sense based on who has had advantages in industries. And the UAW said, Dan said on this program, you're not going to see a car factory come to the United States this year if the tariffs stay, but if they are consistent, if the policy is stable, UAW is thinking, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that it could happen. I think that they're less optimistic now given all the instability. And that point is well taken. But is there in your view, sometimes you hear people in this White House and the political right say, hey, don't we want to make more solar here? Is there a tariff path to onshoring manufacturing in that sector that you can see?
The boat is under the IRA, under Biden, they gave an incentive for manufacturing solar equipment in the United States, and then they gave an additional incentive to the purchasers if we purchase domestic content for our products. We went in that direction. In 2026, the United States will produce more solar panels as a result of that IRA. We'll produce more solar panels in the United States than we use. We will actually start to export solar panels out of the United States because of that policy. So that took 3 or 4. By 2026, we'll have taken 4 years for the policy to be put in place and actually impact the market in that way. And so I think, this is where, the American system of government turning over every 4 years is challenging. Tariffs can work in a targeted fashion. We all understand that. Obama tariffed solar out of China. Trump tariffed solar out of China. Biden tariffed solar out of China in a targeted way. And that all led to, we have now onshored a significant portion of the supply chain where solar is now an American form of energy. But consistent industrial policy would go a long way towards sustainability in an industry like ours and in many industries. And so I think that's the challenge, is that we have different views of how to get this stuff done, and hopefully one doesn't unseat the other in trying to create success.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, man.
No, Kevin laughs. He's trying to keep his head up. We appreciate the time. Kevin Schulte, CEO of GreenSpark Solar. Come back, talk to us about the federal budget when it's done.
Will do. Thank you.
We are talking to small business owners and people in the small business sphere, people who work in development in different ways, who are seeing the possible effects of tariffs. And again, I want to say, we're not teeing this up in a way that says we know what people are going to say. There's any agenda. There's no agenda here. We want to understand what's going on because it is possible that every American household is about to start paying more. The Budget Lab, as I mentioned off the top, their analysis last night, not last week, last night after the partial reversal from the Trump administration in tariffs, not a full reversal at all, but the Budget Lab says A $4,400 tax hike per American household is coming in the short term, and consumers now face an overall average effective tariff rate of 25.3%, which is the highest since 1909. So let's continue the conversation, and I want to bring in Suzanne Hunt to the program. And Suzanne has worked as a member of the sustainable business community. Suzanne has advised companies and continues to do so. And welcome back. Thank you for making time for us on this program today, Suzanne.
Sure, good to be here.
So I want to just kind of take your 30,000-foot view before we get a little bit more specific. But what has the last week been like for the people that you have worked with regarding tariffs?
So I work with a whole bunch of folks that are developing, financing, and building infrastructure, green infrastructure projects. And, these are projects that, sort of like an auto manufacturing plant, they can take 3, 4, 5 years to develop. So you are getting access to land, you are getting permits, you are figuring out your cost of inputs, things like steel. You are figuring out your capital costs, what your estimated operating costs are going to be. And for big investments in big infrastructure that has a long lifespan and that has a long payback period, uncertainty and unpredictability is just the worst possible thing. So what we're seeing is a whole bunch of capital. To answer your question more directly, we're seeing a whole bunch of capital sitting on the sidelines and a whole bunch of investments being paused because there's so much new risk being introduced and so much uncertainty being introduced.
But this is a White House that says the chaos is actually part of the possible feature, although Trump himself didn't say that this time. I mean, he said yesterday he basically was responding to the bond markets and got spooked. But some of his advisors have said, well, chaos is helpful because if there's chaos, if you don't know if we're going to pull this policy tomorrow and reinstitute it in 90 days, or maybe we'll keep it on for another week and we'll take it off again, that you're more likely to play ball and we'll get the better deals. And you seem to be saying that is a theory on paper, and in practice, chaos and uncertainty is not what drives people to make long-term decisions. Is that a fair read of it?
I can only speak for what I'm hearing from infrastructure investors. And they, when they go when the investment committees sit down with a series of potential investment opportunities and they are assessing CapEx, OpEx, estimated, cost of capital, and you introduce all of this unpredictability and uncertainty and all of these, say one of your big offtake contracts is with a buyer across the border in Canada, and suddenly that buyer says, I can't sign any contracts with you because I don't know what the tariff cost is going to be. Suddenly your offtake disappears. Like a whole bunch of investments are now suddenly off the table. I can't speak for what this administration is trying to accomplish, but I can speak for large infrastructure investors that are trying to put steel in the ground in the U.S. and hire a bunch of folks to do good work. And that this is making it much, much more difficult and much less likely that those investments are going to go forward.
One other question for you before I let you go, and I know your time is tight, and I appreciate you coming on. One of the things that you have talked about on this program over the years is the urgency that is required to address issues like climate change in a way that is sustainable. And that's not as a buzzword, but by that I mean cultural and sort of mindset changes that involve a lot of people across industries, sometimes across borders and countries, working together, setting goals, competing, but continuing to understand that that part of the larger goal here is achievable. And I'm wondering what it's like for you to see the adversarial nature of this administration. Do you see any benefit to the adversarial nature that says we're changing our approach? It's going to be purely transactional, that we view deals, and this is what the Trump administration says, we view deals as zero-sum games. There's always one winner, one loser, and we're going to aim to be the winners, and we don't care if you're the losers. Does that change how we are trying to solve big problems around the world?
What I will say is that we live in a very interconnected world. The United States is a massive player in the world. And when you're steering a massive ship you don't yank the wheel in one direction or the other. You make well thought out, careful adjustments so that folks who are putting their skin in the game and risking their neck to go out there and do the things that the world needs, like building infrastructure, like hiring folks, like being responsible for their income and their livelihoods. You don't yank the rug out from under them. You don't yank the wheel. And because effectively that's what this policy of on again, off again, dramatic tariffs is doing, it is creating a huge amount of animosity towards the United States. And unfortunately, it's towards the United States, not towards the Trump administration. So it's really difficult to go, doing business in Canada, doing business in the UK with some of our longest, best, strongest allies. You have the city of Toronto and a whole bunch of the province of Ontario creating new policies to buy Canadian and literally making it impossible for American companies to bid on contracts because there's such a backlash towards the United States right now.
But there's not a distinction of saying, look, the government is not the people and, administrations are temporary, et cetera?
They're using whatever tools they can to try and fight back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for making time and for sharing your perspective. Great to have you as always.
Thanks for having me, Evan.
Yeah, Suzanne Hunt, who works in sustainable business development in a number of places. And it's been a week. We're talking about the effect of tariffs on the economy, on prices, on what small businesses are dealing with, and the decisions that have to be made. One of the things that was clear for the last couple of months in talking to the UAW and talking to economists and talking to small business owners was, if we're going to do this, we better stick to it. If you really claim you want more manufacturing, more onshoring, more jobs here, and we just see this whiplash back and forth. So that's what we are talking about on the program today. Let me read a note from Charlie, who wants to share his family's business experience. He says, my wife has run a design and build firm for over 30 years. Yesterday, she showed me a photograph of a bathroom she completed just 2 days ago, and she told me this: if I had to build this exact same bathroom with the post-tariff costs, I would lose money on it. I can't think of any clearer way of explaining what's going on with these ridiculous tariffs. We live in a global economy. Mr. Trump apparently does not understand that. That's from Charlie. And by the way, it's a lovely bathroom. We're not going to share it to protect the privacy of the client, but it looks great, Charlie. I do appreciate the business perspective there. After we take our only break of the hour, we're going to continue talking to small business owners about what they are experiencing so far as we try to get a handle on the effect of tariffs on companies, small business, the prices we pay, and more. Connections continues in a moment.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Mary Cariola Center, providing education and life skills solutions designed to empower individuals and the families of those with complex disabilities. Mary Cariola Center, transforming lives of people with disabilities. More at marycariola.org. And Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield, with a mission to address health inequities by building up communities and breaking down health barriers. Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield, everybody benefits. More at excelisbcbs.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. We want to continue to hear from you this hour and in the days and weeks to come about the effect of tariffs on the prices that you're paying, and on if you're in small business. We especially want to hear from you on that. And again, I want to hear all perspectives. I'm not teed up in any direction here. I'm not hearing a lot of good things. I have heard from some small business owners in the last week that if this led to some sort of a manufacturing renaissance in this country, that their businesses would benefit, and that could be a good thing. But they have echoed what everyone else is saying, which is, how are we going to get there without a consistency of approach, without a consistent and stable environment that makes it easy to invest with certainty? There's not a lot of certainty right now. And I'll tell you one thing I'm certain about. It's nice to hear Jane again. It's been a little while. Jane in Rochester. Hi, Jane. Go ahead.
Well, he does not seek to have stability. He doesn't. Do you remember when he was campaigning and there was violence? The groups were creating violence, and he just, in a rhapsody almost, said That's what we've got to have. We've got to have violence. We've got to have people in the streets. And I think they used to call that creative destructiveness. But if everything is chaos, that is what they need to get martial law in, for instance. And again, he reads Hitler and all that, and that was what, the more destructive. I can't think. He took everything from people. You don't have a home anymore. You don't have food. A pint of milk is $200. I mean, it was that way in Nazi Germany. But I'm saying it was used as a technique for him to get greater power. And when everybody's scared to death, and it goes to pot. But it's important to me to know that was remembered. Do you remember at your answer that he was actually saying that would be a good thing? That so there's nothing of value in our country, especially democracy. But I just want to get the idea in that this may be exactly what he wants. So think about it, okay?
Jane?
And, I just couldn't hold back today. I had to say that because I very much heard that, and yet people went out and voted for this man who thinks violence. And the only thing I can think of is that Hitler used it to get complete power. And he thinks a lot of Adolf Hitler. But I'll let you go and listen more. It's a good program. Great.
And Jane, I always appreciate hearing from you. That's about as strong as Jane has, I think, ever expressed an opinion. I don't want to go down roads quite that dark right now. I think Donald Trump has been consistent since the 1980s. He likes tariffs. He views trade as a very rudimentary thing in which there's one winner and one loser. And so if we used this analogy last week, if you're Madagascar and you make vanilla, and you're a poor country otherwise, but you've got a booming vanilla business and you sell your vanilla around the world as they do, and Americans love your vanilla, but you're not a rich country and there's not much from America that you want to buy. Well, we've got a trade deficit with Madagascar. We buy more from them than they do from us. Hammering them because we like their vanilla is a weird thing. But I don't think it's because Donald Trump wants $200 cartons of milk, Jane. I don't know, but I think it's because he really believes in tariffs. He just views it as a zero-sum game. He views all deals as one winner, one loser. Be the winner. Don't be the loser. And so he's going to have to continue to be talked out of this. He talked himself out of it yesterday, as he said. He told reporters the bond market was kind of getting spooky. And that scared him. That scared a lot of people. And that was enough. But I think he's going to stay with tariffs for a while if he's consistent, at least, and he has been since the 80s on this. So I think he thinks it's good. We're going to see. Let me bring in our next guest, who is the owner and chef of Lento Restaurant in Rochester. We talk about food and the prices we're paying in restaurants. And Art Rogers, welcome back to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So any effect in your line of work so far with tariffs?
So not really, I'm going to say. Mainly because they've been implemented and then pulled off. Some of my two of my areas that have been affected where they have been nervous, but it hasn't taken effect, is European wine and, for Lento at least, to a smaller extent, seafood, because I do get a decent amount of seafood from Canada. But because those things were implemented and not implemented, I haven't seen any pain from those things that I would deal with food-wise. So
what happens if that Canadian tariff on seafood goes back into effect? Do you decide, well, that we're not offering that anymore? Do you pass a price on to customers? And do you know how much of an increase we would be talking about there?
Well, it would be dependent on how much the tariff is. And yes, both those things you said, and or they both could be true. I can probably supplement American for a lot of things. And I know we are probably in better shape food-wise in America to shift to domestic production for food as opposed to maybe large-scale manufacturing, like making cars or computers or
Yep.
whatever, where we have to build huge factories. I don't think we're in any danger of like being starved out. It's easier probably to implement large-scale agriculture quickly as opposed to large-scale manufacturing. I also don't know, because I deal with local farmers, where, chicken feed comes from or fertilizers come from. So there may be some indirect costs that they could be affected that is passed on to me, but I haven't seen any of that yet. But everything's been going up and down, pause and go. So, just like everybody, I'm watching day to day what's going to stick.
Well, your idea, though, I think you're right to say that building new car factories is not as viable as scaling up food production if it had to happen or if people wanted to do it. Is that a possible benefit that you see of tariffs? Should we focus more on American food production?
Evan, I have no idea. I buy most of my food locally from like local farmers. I mean, I'm not completely naive. Like a lot of seafood comes from China. If you go to the Restaurant Depot, shrimp and squid and, frozen fish, almost 100% of it does come from China. I don't buy any of those things, so that could affect a lot of other restaurants. I know a lot of beef comes from Canada, Australia, Mexico, South America. So yes, like that type of thing could be more of an effect for other restaurants, but I think it would be. I don't know if it would be. I don't know if it would be a benefit.
Okay.
I guess if Donald Trump thinks, he wants everything made in America and bought in America, I suppose. I don't know.
Okay. Well, before I let you go, I want to say, Art is reminding us that Lento from the beginning has really focused as much as possible on local food production, and a lot of people who are customers there have appreciated that. As a result, sometimes if you're willing to pay more for local, you do that and you let people know where it comes from, and you try to figure out what your customers can bear. How much of a price increase in the restaurant industry do you think American diners can bear? How much, when prices move, do you notice reservations going up or down, Art?
So I have noticed it. So sort of related, of course, to my business. The fluctuation in the stock market is the first thing you're going to cut out if you're losing your hat on your stocks is going out to eat, going on vacation. So we have noticed since the stock market plummeted that we have lost business. And that
in the last
is my
week?
biggest.
Just in the last
Yeah.
week, you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I think it makes sense on, even if it's just like in your head, like I just lost thousands of dollars in the stock market, like we're not going out, we're not spending money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing that is keeping me up at night is, going out to eat is a luxury. It's something, not everybody can do all the time. And it's an easy thing to cut out of your budget if you're financially strapped. So the economy and the stock market plummeting is definitely stressing me out and causing me anxiety.
Don't look at today's market, Art. Have you already looked?
Well, you're gonna be mad at me, but I haven't turned on the radio yet today, so I don't know what's going on.
I can never be mad at you, Art. But
I know. I usually listen to NPR all day, but I don't know. Yesterday was up. Today, I guess this morning they said it was down. I did listen to it on the way to work.
It is way down. It's way down.
Just like the uncertainty talking about, and it makes everybody nervous. And
yeah.
So that's my biggest. That's my biggest concern is, making sure people have enough disposable income so they can go out to eat once in a while.
Yeah, I appreciate the point. I was thinking all about supply chains and prices, and I wasn't thinking about the psychology of the market swings affecting whether people make reservations. Well, your phone's ringing. I'm going to let you get it. Art, thank you for taking time for us.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Evan.
Art Rogers, chef and owner of Lento. And this is a series of conversations this hour with small business owners about what they're experiencing, up or down or otherwise, from a wild week in the markets and certainly from tariffs. And if you're wondering, hey, well, why are you talking tariffs today? The president reversed tariffs yesterday. That is certainly not fully true. It is not at all true with China, who is, the biggest dog out there. So 145% tariff on China remains in effect. That's a big one. 10% across the board. What the president scrapped was this strange, heavily criticized White House analysis of how to create a balanced trade formula with every country on earth. So that's paused for 90 days. But all these other ones are staying. And that's partially, I think, why the markets are tanked today. But again, I'm not going to get addicted to trying to figure out the markets day to day. It's just been wild swings. And my next guest can talk a little about the kind of product that tends to come from, I think I had a cup of coffee from Ethiopia this morning. Ugly Duck Coffee's Rory Van Grohl is with us. Hey, Rory, thanks for making time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Evan.
So tell us a little bit about the coffee world, which does work with products that come from other countries quite often. What's it been like for you?
Well, immediately, I think I'm going to piggyback off on what Art from Lunta was saying. I think it's more of the uncertainty. We are a luxury item. And so people can choose to come visit us, or they can, choose to visit elsewhere or buy coffee from a grocery market that's cheaper. So we have seen that effect. People are already starting to scale back their purchasing, and that's totally understandable. But I would say on the global scale, we are looking at a product that coffee is 99% imported into the United States. 1% is domestically sourced. And that's the fact, and that's probably going to stay that way forever.
We can't onshore manufacturing of coffee?
We cannot do that, no. We can onshore manufacturing coffee equipment, but which happens, but not the actual coffee.
We just don't have good conditions like we see in so many other countries. Is that it?
That is a fact. The belt of coffee is in between the tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. That is the coffee belt.
Do you know how truly dystopian it is when my brain was like, yeah, but climate change? I mean, it's not a healthy thing to think. I should not be. The reality is for coffee, it, as Rory says, comes from a lot of different places. And so, we used Madagascar vanilla earlier this hour as an example, but I'm thinking about Ethiopian coffee. I love Ethiopian coffee.
Wonderful.
It is. And there's a country where, we may have, quote unquote, a trade deficit because we love their coffee, but that's not a wealthy country. They're not buying a lot from the United States. And so technically we're at a deficit. And this White House would say, well, we're losers then, and we got to hammer them or make them buy more of our stuff. Again, I think we're all just trying to get our heads around what that actually means. Does that make any sense to you, Rory, that, these countries where you're bringing in coffee from, should we look at it in those sort of bilateral winner-loser terms?
Personally, no. I mean, that makes no sense in the grand scheme of creating any good partnership with anyone across the board, in my opinion. You have to have good faith in certain aspects of how you do business and how you operate. And I don't believe that's a positive way to extend that. It's not always going to be, I do this now, you give me this now kind of relationship. And I think that's kind of where, unfortunately, we're in this administration at this point.
Melissa from Fairport called in to support Jane's comment. Earlier call this hour, Melissa says, the chaos in the markets is planned. The intention is to stoke fear. And another commenter on YouTube says, I'm more worried about the world's coffee than oil. A lot of people are worried about the world's coffee. So just before we let you go, Rory, just briefly, are we likely to see higher prices passed to consumers? Can you afford to eat any of the higher costs if tariffs either stick or rise? What happens next?
I think ultimately coffee is going to rise based on something you hinted at before, which is climate change. And that is something that the coffee industry has been talking about for years at this point. You know, right now, my understanding of the tariff situation is that there's a 10% increase across the board now, but somewhere like Vietnam, there's a over 40% moment right now. And for us to navigate any climate change situation, we're going to have to navigate and bring in other varietals of coffee right now, which is Robusta, which is something we typically haven't used in specialty coffee. And over the past month, we actually just served a Robusta for the first time ever because our industry is changing to navigate climate change. And if we're not able to navigate that, then, you know, coffee is going to see a huge shift. And with a 40% tariff on Vietnam, we're going to see our Robusta production, or at least what we see in the States, is going to be a dramatic shift. And, you know, I think from what I understand, the U.S. is one of the biggest consumers of coffee in the entire world, if you can imagine that. And so I do think that you will see an increase in the cost of coffee. And the folks that, you know, buy it every day has already seen an increase, and they'll continue to see that increase.
Thank you for making time for us, Rory. You know, we just want to make sure we keep getting these perspectives, and we appreciate what you do. Everybody loves, well, most people love coffee. People are good people.
I will, you know, and I will say too, like, I think that most places that are serving coffee and restaurants and hospitality don't take these things lightly and are really understand and are alongside with the folks navigating those issues. They're at the grocery store. They're also visiting other places. So they understand. So let's give some grace for those folks that are working in those positions too.
Thank you for making time, Rory. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Rory Van Grol from Ugly Duck Coffee in Rochester. It's part of our series of conversations this hour with small business owners about the impact of the wild week on the market in the last week, but really about American economic policy right now, the effects of tariffs around the world, and the effects of supply chains, products, and prices on consumers. And my next guest is Fred Merworth, who is the owner and winemaker at Herman J. Weimer Vineyards on Seneca Lake. They got a nursery business there, too. They do a lot. Fred, welcome back to the program. Thanks for making time for us.
Hi, Evan. Thanks for having me on.
Too early to see effects of tariffs on your business, or no?
It really depends on the as you said, it depends on the aspect of the business at the moment. So, or the area of business. So the nursery side, as you mentioned, we're a producer of grafted grapevines that we sell around the country. We, with two other New York-based nurseries, just started to produce certified nursery plants in the last 2 years to be able to sell directly into Ontario and then distribute throughout Canada. And so we sent our first certified vines there this spring. I have a really great relationship with some growers there, and based on tariffs and, you know, really, as Rory and Art mentioned, you know, the uncertainty, I don't know if I have a market there next year. They need plants. They want clean plants that are coming out of New York State, but there's no commitment. They just won't commit based on uncertainty and potential higher costs. So that's one that we're seeing directly impact us at the moment.
What about the kinds of materials you need to get a winery working, to get wine bottled and out? Any effect on prices or what you're seeing there?
Yeah, you know, that's going to be just a little slower to realize. You know, people, including ourselves, who have, you know, the last vintage 2023 or 22s that are in bottle, that won't show up in the market. But, you know, as a producer, grower, and winemaker, we're getting ready to bottle our 2024s. So, you know, just some quick math from last week as I'm putting together our glass orders. All of our glass comes from Europe. You know, a lot of producers are buying glass from Mexico or from China. We choose to buy all of our glass from Europe. with the tariffs in place, based on bottling under glass with cork, we were going to see about 25 cents per bottle increase cost. Now, that doesn't show up in the market for another 6 months or a year or whenever that wine gets released, but that's a cost right up front for us. So that doesn't feel good for sure.
And lastly, Fred, and then I'll take some phone calls because boy, this has really rung the bell of the audience. A lot of phone calls here. Fred, I just want to close with this. Art Rogers of Lento was saying that when there's wild swings in the market and the markets are down, then they're up a little and then they're down a lot, people stay home, or people don't get that cup of coffee out, or maybe they don't get that wine order in. And I wonder what you think consumers will absorb from your consumers at Herman J. Weimer. You have a lot of regular customers and members, but for people who show up on a daily basis or on weekends or in wine shops around the region or around the country, are you worried about sales dropping just because of those factors that Art mentioned?
Yeah, and I think I need to just mention that the wine industry globally isn't coming into this in a particularly healthy position. Lots of competition from other beverages. Overall worldwide consumption is down. So we're getting, as a local producer here, as with national and international markets, we are certainly getting creative of trying to get more people to the winery. But then, as Rory mentioned, and Art specifically about disposable income and watching the stock market, how's that going to affect people coming out on a weekend to taste wine? Are they going to be like, well, maybe not this weekend, or I'm going to hold off on that splurge or that, I am certain we will see that because it is a luxury item. It's not ingrained in our culture like a lot of the European countries. So, it is, I think, very much, a dollar thing that we will see.
Thank you for making time. We appreciate it. Good luck to you and to all the small business owners in your line of work down in the Finger Lakes. Thank you, Fred.
Evan, thank you very much.
Fred Merworth, owner and winemaker at Herman J. Weimer Vineyard. And let me get some of your feedback here. Celia, Camille, Kim, let's talk about this. Celia in Rochester, go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate this conversation, but I think that one of the things people have to do with the Trump administration is they're hitting us on a million different points and on purpose to, confuse and distract everyone. And we're trying to bite things down and talk about each one. I mean, I know you have to separate things and make them small enough to talk about, but I just want to say, like, when the guy from Lento was talking about how we need to upscale food production in this country tremendously, well, food production in this country is completely dependent on immigrant labor. In the fields, in the food factories, completely dependent. And so when you look at what's happening with immigration, how are we going to upscale food production? And I kind of felt the same way, Evan, when you were talking to that woman, Jane, about, well, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to talk forever. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to say it's all a big picture, and it's hard to talk about one point without thinking about all the rest.
Celia, thank you very much. It is a really good point on food production. Certainly immigrant labor is central to that. And under this administration's policies, what would that mean if we attempted a significant scale up of American food production? And America makes a lot of food. We got a big agricultural industry. But if a big increase, what would happen? Celia is raising, I think, a very fair question. Camille in Caledonia, you got to keep it tight. Camille, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just, like Jane, I feel like this, I don't feel like it. I know that he is just getting his jollies from jerking people around. Ooh, look what I can do. It's like a egocentric 2-year-old who is testing his boundaries, seeing what reactions he can get. And he's just so excited about his own power to see what he can do. And then the AP said this morning, I think it was the AP, said this morning that just hours before dropping the tariffs, he said he sort of gave what sounds like a dog whistle, I guess you call it a dog whistle, of like saying on his little truth.
Good time to buy, yeah.
Good time to buy.
Yeah.
And then he signs it with his little initials that have to do with a company of his. What the fuck?
I better jump in there. Thank you, Camille. Thank you for that. I did the edit myself. By the way, Camille's point there, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut says there will be an insider trading investigation on who profited in Congress based on the 15 minutes between the president's Truth Social post and his announcement on tariffs. Okay, and though I don't know if they're profiting, the market's way down today. Kim and Hilton, against my better judgment, you got about 20 seconds. Go ahead, Kim.
Thanks, Evan. I would just say read Ruth Ben-Ghiat's book called Strongmen. I think all of it, all the firings, all the government upset, all the department closures, and the markets are all chaos, planned chaos, right along the lines of what Jane was saying. But it's a bigger picture than just the markets. It's everything together.
Thank you for the phone call. An interesting reference there. Listeners, a lot of interest in this subject, and I realize we're going to be following it because if our prices on, well, at the grocery store, big item in the campaign last year, it's going to be a big item this year. We'll watch that. But really prices across supply chains and affecting consumers in a lot of different ways. We'll be watching that, and we'll keep following that. If you're in small business, send me a separate note, connections@wxxi.org. We want to keep checking in with you to see how you're doing. Otherwise, thank you for being with us on this Thursday afternoon. From all of us at Connections, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on the WXXI News YouTube channel. We are back with you tomorrow on member-supported public media.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.